Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 465 for the 17th of September 2017. Richard Saunders here with you from a gloriously sunny Sydney, Australia, the sort of weather I really love. Nice and sunny without being hot. Well, warm anyway. Although in the past week we had something of a record-breaking heat day for September, I heard along the way. It was pretty hot. Coming up on this week's show, and I'm going to race through these because it's a big show today, lots in the show and lots of extra notes to talk about. But coming up in this week's show, I chat to author Kurt Andersen, who's just written a book called FANTASYLAND, How America Went Haywire, a 500-year history. Kurt and I will be discussing conspiracy theories from his new book. We have Brew Ha Ha Science. This week, Ben Lewis looks at mining asteroids. Then it's Maynard's spooky action. Maynard chats to Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki from an interview Maynard did some years ago. But it's so relevant today because Dr. Karl talks about all sorts of interesting science, as he normally does, including some things of particular interest to skeptics, of course, like how your memory can fool you. Maynard and Dr. Karl coming up a bit later on. Then my on-the-spot live report, and boy, was this live, from an anti-vaccination rally here in Sydney. I went along to see what was going on, and as I was filming live for Facebook, so people around the world could check it out, one of the organisers comes up and confronts me. What happened? What ensued? What did I say? What did she say? Find out later on in the show. Then to round off the show, a recap of the story we brought you last week when I appeared on national TV to talk about the Australian Skeptics $100,000 prize and offered that prize to somebody who claims they're psychic on the show and they turned me down. We have a report about that TV appearance. Now, before we get stuck into the show, something that came up in the last week. The last week saw the third anniversary of the disappearance of a young boy in New South Wales called William Tyrrell. This is an ongoing investigation and mystery. The police have not given up finding this poor little boy who, it would seem, was abducted from the yard of his grandmother, if I've got my story right. And police have renewed their investigation, or at least went out publicly to remind the public, the press and the public, that they're not giving up, hopefully to find this boy, who would be 6 years old by now. He was about 3 when he went missing. Now, the reason I mention this is because there was a press conference held by Detective Chief Inspector Gary Jublin of the New South Wales Police, the homicide squad, in fact. And he was there to assure the public that investigations are ongoing. But what particularly caught my attention was when he said this.
But please don't waste our time. We're not interested in information from clairvoyants or people that have dreams. We're focused on this investigation, following up information that's relevant to William's disappearance.
So there is a very direct message from the New South Wales Police pleading with clairvoyants basically not to waste their time. And it just reminds me of all the times over the many years I've heard the old trope coming out, psychics help police. Psychics help police. Police use psychics to solve crimes. When the police themselves say, do not bother us, go away. Police are not interested in fantasies, and I think that message is applicable all around the world. Well done indeed, Detective Inspector Gary Jublin, and I'm sure we all wish that this whole matter of the missing boy can be brought to conclusion. Now, I've got lots more to say at the end of the show, more notes, more loose ends to tie up and things to chat about, but for now, it's time for me to run downstairs. Going to have some lovely sourdough toasty bread with a little bit of avocado and sesame oil. Avocado and sesame oil, sesame seed oil. That's pretty good. And a coffee, of course, a coffee. While I do all that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. And joining me now on the line all the way from New York is the author of Fantasyland, How America Went Haywire, a 500-year history, is Kurt Andersen. Hello, Kurt.
Hello. Happy to be with you.
Great to catch up with you all the way in New York. I was only there about 8 weeks ago for a convention, and my first trip to New York, I loved it, apart from the heat, of course, the heat and humidity.
Well, there's that, although we've actually had a relatively mild summer, so I guess you missed that part.
I must have been there the 1 week where it wasn't. It was. I look forward to going back to seeing some of the sites. I was very busy at the time. But enough about New York, although New York will factor in soon, I think, in our discussion. Now, the publisher sent me a little bit of information about the book, Fantasyland. Can you give me your take on this book and what inspired you to write it?
Well, there are lots of parts of it that I've been thinking about and addressing in various things I've written over the years, in essays, in fiction, all kinds of ways, about America's extreme religiosity compared to the rest of the developed world, about lately especially how preposterous conspiracy theories have moved from the fringes into the mainstream and really have started to affect national policy and politics, about all of the various ways in which Americans, through Hollywood and the celebrity culture and the entertainment industry, and the entertainment industry as it sort of subsumes so much of American life, has essentially blurred the boundaries and the lines between fiction and reality. And it certainly has a huge impact on the political right, but it also, there are various versions on the political and cultural left, including so much of alternative medicine. These are things I've been thinking about, I began trying to figure out, how did this happen? Why in so many of these respects is America so different than the rest of the rich world? And I began sort of tracing the threads back in history, and I found that the 1960s were an important time. But then I thought, no, let's keep going. And really, I went back to the beginning, to our founding by on the one hand, essentially an extreme cult of Protestants up in New England, and extreme gold hunters who thought they were going to get rich overnight in the South, who kept looking for gold despite the fact that there was none there, and they didn't give up. So that was our beginnings, and that became essentially the American DNA. Believe the impossible, and experts be damned.
Yeah, it's interesting because you make a very good point. If I think about the situation as compared to Australia, we certainly have pockets of extremism here, be it on the left or the right. But overall, we're not a very religious country, generally speaking. I mean, I had the occasion some years ago to travel through Georgia. It was a fascinating trip for me down through the countryside through Georgia, and I was astonished of how many Baptist churches I passed along the way through these country roads. And at one stage there was a giant billboard, much bigger than the ones here in Australia, that simply said Jesus on it. It's just right. Entrenched, isn't it?
It is entrenched, and of course, even more closer to home, we have the great natural experiment of Canada versus the United States, and it's extraordinary how much less religious Canada is than the United States. And it's not just billboards that say Jesus. It's not just a lot of churches. It's not just people who attend church a lot. It's the extravagance and the flamboyance of Christian belief in this country, starting really about 50 years ago with what is now called charismatic Christianity, which encompasses faith healing and speaking in tongues and so much more. The belief that the end time is truly nigh, and Armageddon and Jesus' return are going to happen any day now, is the belief of not just pockets of people, but of tens of millions of people. It's remarkable. And so that is not the whole of my book, but it is certainly a big part of the inquiry, and one of the most sort of starkly measurable parts of our difference from our peer nations around the world.
Yes, I've been hearing stories about the end times since I was a little boy, so that's nothing new. And years and decades and centuries before then, that story's been going around. Also, in the book, you cover such topics, oddly enough, as Disneyland, Oprah Winfrey, the 1960s, as you said, the Trump administration, fake news, all that sort of stuff. But one of the things I'll get you to chat about just for a moment is something that caught my eye, which are conspiracy theories, and you mentioned those a little earlier on. I mean, all sorts of bizarre things, like the biggest one, I think, would be the 9/11 conspiracy theory. We've got the climate change hoax conspiracy theory, the Birthergate, all that sort of thing. What are some of the more fascinating ones from your point of view?
Well, the 9/11 one was definitely fascinating because although that kind of conspiracism and conspiracy theorizing has become a much more central and predominant part of the political right in the United States than the left. The 9/11 conspiracy theory was certainly at the beginning a thing believed by people on the left. That's partly, of course, because the president of the United States at the time was a conservative Republican. And the thing there, I mean, obviously, as I stipulate again and again to protect myself in this book, there are conspiracies. Conspiracies sometimes exist. The Watergate crimes and cover-up, a conspiracy, and there are others. But the extensiveness and duration and, frankly, preposterousness of these conspiracy theories, like that the 9/11 was an inside job by the United States government, perhaps in complicity with Mossad and from Israel, is that they are believed with a passion that is like religious conviction, that is like religious faith. And I say that not just by analogy, but I think it is partly Americans' religiosity, whether or not they are religious people, but that part of the character, that passionate belief against all empirical evidence in whatever you wish to believe, that drives these kinds of flamboyant conspiracy theories. And of course, that has always been around. It did get in the wake of President Kennedy's assassination in the 1960s. Conspiracy theorizing got a bump in the American discourse, but it really became mainstreamed and part of so much of mainstream politics, especially on the right, in the last 20 years. And the 9/11 trutherism was part of that. Then Donald Trump entering politics 6 years ago on the basis of his belief or alleged belief in a conspiracy that covered up Barack Obama's foreign birth.
Well, I think the first one that really struck me was the moon landing. When that came out, the moon landing hoax believers, all that sort of thing, which surprised me at the time. I didn't take it seriously, but years later, people were still passionately believing in that. But I think the most extreme example, I would agree, would be 9/11, where people are zealots. They're absolutely convinced to the point of almost a mania that this must have been the case.
Well, they are, and I was on a radio program this week talking about my book, and one of the passionate believers in that call, and his anger was he seethed with anger that I dared lump him in with a religious believer. He is not. He's not religious. He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in the supernatural. But this conspiracy to blow up the World Trade Center, he has proof of that. It's ferocious, and their faith is unshakable, as though it's religion. And as I said to him, listen, if a journalist had there are hundreds, thousands of journalists in America and the world who would become famous overnight and earn Pulitzer Prizes and everything else if they could present the facts that showed that this was a conspiracy and an inside job. Why have none of them done it? And he just had no answer for that. He knew the truth, and he couldn't explain why nobody else has exposed it. So it is, and again, as you say, with the moon landings were fake. That was a joke. That was for years after 1969, after the moon landings. That was along the lines of, the flat earthers, people who believe the earth is flat, people who believe the lunar landings was fake. Well, the lunar landings being faked is no more preposterous or true than Barack Obama was born in Kenya, and it's a measure of what has happened in these decades, that such a allegation, or the allegation that global warming is a hoax perpetrated by a conspiracy of scientists and journalists and liberals and governments, that those are no longer fringe ideas or dismissed as crackpot ideas, but are in the arena as mainstream orthodoxy.
It's certainly a bizarre situation, and you're right. I think it seems to be centered on the United States, although not exclusively. Of course, these conspiracy theories go around the world. Folks, the book is called Fantasyland, How America Went Haywire, a 500-year history, and that's available from Random House. I will be putting links in this week's show notes if you want to get yourself a copy. It looks like a fascinating read. Well, listen, Kurt, thank you very much for your time for the Skeptic Zone today, and all the best with the book.
Thanks so much, Richard. I appreciate it.
And now, direct from the cafe at Australia's Science Channel, it's Brew Ha Ha. Science in less time than it takes to order a coffee. With Ben Lewis.
So you want to be an asteroid mining magnate? We've got one word for you. Luxembourg. Step 1. Start an asteroid mining company and set up an office in the tiny landlocked European country. We hear the capital city, also called Luxembourg, is really nice in spring. Step 2. Invest heavily in research and development and build all the rockets and mining equipment you'll need. Of course, we think you should stay in Australia for this step, but there's nothing stopping you from heading overseas. Step 3. Figure out when a valuable asteroid is passing close enough to Earth that you can blast off, land on it, and extract all the resources you can. Step 4. Get all the minerals, water, space dust, whatever you found, back to Earth safely. Step 5. Profit. Thanks to Luxembourg's new asteroid mining law, while you never owned the asteroid itself, now that you've successfully mined it, you own everything you found and are free to sell it for profit. And even though you're based in Australia, because you have that office in Luxembourg, you're covered by that law. So there you have it, your 5-point plan to asteroid mining success.
For more Brew Ha Ha and Australian science, visit www.australiascience.tv or visit Australia's Science Channel on Facebook.
G'day, this is Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki, proud to be a skeptic, and you can find out more about me at drkarl.com and get lots of free stuff there as well.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Hello, Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki.
Dr. Maynard.
Some personal business for the listeners. I believe your shoulder is not well at all at the moment.
Those surfing injuries, some people say it was a 40-footer. I say it was a bit less, maybe 39 foot less.
Physician, heal thyself. How are you going?
Well, pretty well. The bone's healing itself nicely, as it does. They say the bone is the prince of tissues, and God bless it, it's healing all by itself, and soon I'll have full range of mobility back.
If you could have your time over again as a physician, is there another area you'd like to study instead of your chosen path?
No, the only change I would have done would be to have not dropped off the bodybuilding and the martial arts. I would have kept that up.
Oh, but that's a lot to do and study.
Yeah, healthy mind, healthy body. If I'd had more muscle mass over my shoulder, the surfboard wouldn't have smashed the shoulder ball up into little pieces. Well, I also have a show on the BBC.
And how have the Brits taken to you?
Oh, I've been fabulously well. A little bit different from the American audience, who seems to be basically, and I don't know why, my favourite American audience are born-again fundamentalist gun-toting Christians from Texas.
Oh, really? What, you don't get any left-wing Americans?
As far as I can tell, in America, you have two political parties. You have the Republicans that correspond to our right-wing party, and you have the Democrats that correspond to our right-wing party. So I'd have somebody ring in and I'd say, "G'day, how you going?" And he'd say, "Well, blessed in the blood of the Lord God Jesus, who came from heaven and died on a cross for our sins, that we all might have life everlasting, John 3:16, how are you?" And sometimes he'd just shorten it down to blessed in the blood of the Lord God Jesus, or just blessed, but I knew what he was thinking. This guy would ask really deep questions. And he was a minister, as you would guess, a minister of religion in a Baptist church. There are many varieties of Baptist church there. And he firmly believed that the world was only 6,000 years old. He also had a PhD in nuclear physics, and so he knew about radioactive decay of elements. He had a PhD in nuclear chemistry, and he designed and built nuclear weapons. His weekend job was just being a minister of religion. And so one part of his brain knows that the universe has been around for a really long time, and the other part of his brain thinks it's been around for 6,000 years. Most of us are not perfect, and we do have variation between what we say and what we do.
Isn't that called hypocrisy?
No, we're only human. At the end of the day, if you've got kids, and if the kids aren't bleeding and the house isn't on fire, it's been a good day.
That's true. And when you go to bed at the end of your good day, Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki, in your book you mention dreams. What do you dream about the most often?
I dream on anything, but I have two recurrent dreams. One is the nightmare of sitting for an exam and I have no clothes on.
And the phone rings.
And the phone rings. And the other nightmare is that I can fly. And I've even found the park in Sydney where I do the flying. I drove past it one day and I thought, wow. And the thing about dreams is that there's this myth, which is one of the 35 myths I deal with in my book. There's this myth where people say, "Oh, I never dream." Everybody dreams at least 4 times a night, but whether you remember your dreams depends on how soon after you finish dreaming that you wake up. And so if you wake up within 5 minutes, mate, you remember it beautifully. 15 minutes, you forget it. If you want to prove that somebody dreams, somebody who says, "I never dream," sneak up on them and then just watch them carefully. And when their eyes underneath their closed eyelids start going left, right, as though they're watching an invisible tennis match, wait until they finish flicking left and right, and this is called REM, or rapid eye movement. Shake them gently and say what you were dreaming about, and they'll tell you.
Now, were you sitting on other faith matters such as life after death? I know it's the biggie. Where do you sit on that one at the moment?
I'm waiting for the proof.
That's a tough one, but...
Yeah, there's the whole out-of-body experience thing. Being able to prove or replicate the out-of-body experience by stimulating the left or the right angular gyrus in the brain, and sure enough, you either come out of your body and see yourself, or you actually float above yourself and look down. Now, there's a few theatres around the world, operating theatres, where people do say, on waking up, that they had the out-of-body experience. And in each case, they're specially prepared to theatre, and they say, "Oh, and what did you see?" And they said, "Oh, just you guys. And did you see anything over in that corner?" Pointing to a corner where there's a cupboard and there's so high up you can't see it from the ground. And they say no, and what they have is some very bright dolls, or Daffy Duck dolls or something, which if somebody were to, which you can't see from the ground level in the theatre. And so far, of all the people who have claimed they've had an out-of-body experience, not one of them was able to say, "Yes, I saw a Daffy Duck doll in the corner."
What about those people that have claimed they've seen events going on outside the theatre or in other parts of the town or the country and claim
Go right ahead. Show me the proof. Write down what you saw. Let's go and check it out right now. Not a month later, not a year later, right on the spot. You see, memory is so easy to fool. It is possible to insert a memory into 1/4 of people's brains. And this was done by Elizabeth Loftus, Loftus, who was dealing with this whole repressed memory epidemic that was running around the countryside about a decade or so. You know, people were claiming, after much psychological counselling and hypnosis, to have been abused by everybody. And she showed how easy it was to insert a memory. She got a whole bunch of people. She was in Los Angeles, near Disneyland, at a university campus there. And she called students in and would give them $100 each time they came in now and then came back in a year's time for 1 hour of psychological testing. You know, answer this, what's your favourite colour, do you prefer paintings that go this way or that way, all that sort of stuff. But in fact, she didn't care about that. And so before she called them in to do the psychology testing, she said, "Look, I'm sorry, there's a bit of a delay. We've just got to hang around for a few minutes. They're still doing the previous guy. So, been to Disneyland?" You know, they'd say, "Oh, yeah," because everybody's been to Disneyland there. And they say, "Oh, Disneyland, how do you like it when Daffy Duck comes up and gives you a cuddle?" And they say, "Well, it didn't happen to me, but yeah, I guess it must be nice. And then they go away. Come back a year later, and this time, so the whole purpose of it was so that she could say to them, how did you like it when Daffy Duck gave you a cuddle? And that was it. A year later, she doesn't mention Daffy Duck. She says, oh, well, look, I'm sorry, there's a bit of a delay. So, been to Disneyland recently? No. Do you remember anything about Disneyland from when you were a kid? Oh, yeah. Daffy Duck gave me a cuddle, which is impossible because Daffy Duck is a Warner Brothers character, not a Disney character. She had successfully implanted a false memory into 1/4 of people. So when you say, oh, what about people who say that they can float out of the air and report things far away? I say, sure. Show me the proof. When was the operation? Now, show me your dated notes in the book where you said that you saw something. Okay, and let's just check the records that thing actually happened at that place at that time. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly the whole thing falls to water.
Now, we're certainly all fallible as humans, and I'm wearing my loud shirt to prove that today. And I'm a big fan of the CI channel. I love crime and investigation. And in your book, you've got fingerprints are not all different. Apparently, fingerprints can't be used. There could be someone out there with the same fingerprints as me.
Right, they just say blandly that all fingerprints are different. It's never been proven. And increasingly, there are cases coming up where people have had fingerprints, have been convicted on the basis of identical fingerprints. New evidence has come up, or DNA evidence has come through, or witnesses come forward, and they go and check the fingerprints, and they're still the same, but it's not the same person. They got the wrong person.
Because they work on a number of points that have to be the same. So it's not they're not looking at the whole squiggle. They're looking at a couple of points on the fingerprint. That's correct, isn't it?
That's right. So you've got about 50 or 70 different points. They look at 5 or 10 or 50, and it varies from country to country. Out of the whole number of points of identity, they look at anything between 8 and 15, depending on what country you're in. And even if all 8 are the same, what about the other 50? With the CSI thing, in some cases, they make up identification techniques that don't even exist. And you know the GSR, the gunshot residue one?
Oh, you love that one. Yeah, which can be ruined by simply putting your hands in bleach.
And everything, and even sitting in a chair where somebody who has fired a gun has sat. Or sitting in the same car as somebody who has fired a gun. Now, most American police officers would fire a gun.
And they put you in the back, and
you pick it up, and then of course you're guilty. Oh, it's just such a con. I'm sorry, they lied to you, and microwaves are not radioactive.
But Monk is a great detective. Inspector Monk.
Well, he has got himself a nice, happy manner, and he just worries after the truth. He's good. I like him. Now, what about cockroaches? Cockroaches are not the only creature that will survive a nuclear holocaust. And what about the one about the daddy longlegs? My 7-year-old daughter came home and said, Daddy longlegs have got the world's most poisonous venom, but they can't kill you because their fangs are too short. Have you heard that one? Yeah, it is impossible, but the kids believe it, and a lot of people believe it. And in fact, firstly, some of the creatures that are daddy longlegs, some of them are spiders and some are not. They're a similar creature with 8 legs, but it's not a spider. Secondly, they do have a poison, but it's not very powerful. And thirdly, their fangs are long enough, but it's not so impressive when your daughter comes up to you and says, hey, guess what, Daddy longlegs have a bite that's mildly irritating.
One I like in the book is the yelling on mobile phones. Whenever we hear people yelling on mobile phones,
why?
We've got a reason. We've got a scientific backup of what to say to them. What is a concise way to say to someone who's yelling on their mobile phone not to do it?
There's an automatic gain control inside your phone on the microphone, and you don't have to shout. And so all you have to do on a mobile phone is speak at a normal speaking volume. You don't have to shout.
But what if you've got a loud back? What if you're in the middle of a dance floor, as I've seen people in the middle of a dance floor, because you've got a very loud noise behind you? You've got to cut through that, haven't you?
You do. You have to increase your signal-to-noise ratio. And in that case, I'd recommend wrapping your hand around the microphone and then shouting. But on a bus where people talk to each other in a normal speaking tone, you don't have to suddenly start shouting, yes, honey, I'll get the milk. Oh, that's good. You don't have to shout on a bus. You can just talk at a normal tone.
Do you think these are people that speak loudly anyway?
Hi, my name's Karl and my hobby is shouting.
One that has come up again and again with people that are trying to lose weight is the old spot reduction of fat. Most people who run gyms will tell you that there is no such thing, but there are some people that believe by doing sit-ups, your tummy will get flatter merely by doing that.
When you do lots of sit-ups, you will develop better abdominal muscles, but those abdominal muscles will be your little secret, your private secret underneath your little fat tummy. It's quite separate that you remove the fat by changing the number of calories in versus calories out. It's just calories in and calories out. That's
so we should just do lots of cardiovascular and that'll whittle it away and watch what we eat.
And I know it sounds ridiculously simple, and that's, of course, why people go for other more complicated ways of doing it and buy my new machine for $70 and it'll help you, the ab trainer, the ab solution, the ab this, the abdominizer.
Do you reckon they will get a fat pill eventually that reduces your appetite and speeds your metabolism up, that works and doesn't have side effects?
All drugs have side effects. What matters is the dose.
But people just don't want to hear watch what you eat and exercise more than you intake. Which is basically the answer, isn't it?
Oh, well, with regard to this whole nuclear energy debate and global warming debate, you can pretty well discuss most of the issues in 1.5 hours, which is as long as it takes to watch a good game of Aussie Rules on TV, but people don't want to do that.
So how is your production of 0 point energy coming along at home, by the way, Karl?
I'd like to make some 0 point energy, but we know it exists, and we know that there's enough energy in 1 cubic centimetre to boil dry all the oceans on Earth, but we've got no way of accessing that energy.
If we did invent 0 point energy, doesn't all energy decay to heat eventually? So if we had unlimited free energy, that planet would probably be as hot as Venus by the end of it anyway.
If we started using up huge amounts of energy, yeah, but then what makes you think we're going to stay on planet Earth? Our means of getting into space is so stupid. What we have is a big metal cylinder. You fill it full of explosive. You put some humans at the pointy end. You light the wick. And if it doesn't blow up in 8 minutes, then you're in orbit.
Do you want to fold space in front of you? We haven't got enough energy on the planet to do that yet, Karl.
Well, we need smarts, not energy. You want to fold space or the elevator to space. The current method of getting around our solar system is just stupid, and we've got to come up with something better. And physics will give us the answer. There's one thing to intellectually know. It's another to experience. Like every time I fly in a jumbo, I think I'm amazed. It weighs 400 tonnes and the thing flies like a bird. I know the physics is there, but I'm still filled with awe and wonder that it does it.
Is there something you want to experience scientifically that we do on this planet that you're yet to experience that you really want to do before you die, Karl? It's the number one on the list.
Yeah, I want to get the Northern Lights. And you've got to go back up into Norway.
I thought you shouldn't have seen them from Norway. I thought you could up there.
Oh, we were in summer. Got to go 6 months later in winter, and they reckon that you get a lot of mist. So if you're up there for 7 nights, you've got a good chance that one of those nights will be clear and the Northern Lights will be running. But you've got to be there for about a week to be able to be sure of seeing it.
Before we finish off here, I'd like to ask you, Karl, what's the one thing each of us could do every day to improve our life? You're you're a physician, you've seen children and adults well and sick throughout their life, both physically and psychologically. You've met a lot of interesting people in your life. What is the thing that seems to be the key to happiness and well-being, the one thing we could do each day?
Oh, well, to happiness and well-being, do a bit of exercise. But I guess the easiest thing is to put yourself in other people's shoes and to see things from their point of view.
Compassion.
It's really, things don't bother me that much unless it's physical violence on me personally. So if somebody takes your parking spot, big deal, the life goes on. Look, at least I've been going around the country on this book tour, and in Melbourne I met this guy who's 54 years old, and for 52 of his 54 years of life, he's lived in war zones. Iran, Iraq, and the Kurds. And for every year of his life, except for 2, people have been shooting at him or his family or dropping bombs. And the only 2 years where they haven't been is when he came to Australia. And he thinks it's heaven on earth. He can't believe it. Not only are people not shooting at you, but if you have a heart attack and fall down in the street, people you don't know will call an ambulance, and other people don't know will take you to a hospital, and other people you don't know will fix you. He can't believe it. It's paradise.
Take everything as relative.
Yeah, that's right. Things could be a lot worse, and just enjoy it. I mean, like, life's not a practice. This is it. This is the one go you get.
And what does the Kruszelnicki family do at Christmas? What Christmas greeting does the Karl family give to the world? How do you celebrate the whole thing?
Well, we do it twice.
Do you dress up? Do you put a beard on?
No. We do it twice. Firstly, we have the Polish Christmas, which happens on Christmas Eve.
Now we're talking vodka.
Right. And then we have the regular Christmas, which happens the next morning, so we get 2 bites at the cherry. I think there's nothing wrong with having lots of fun and lots of parties.
So you don't dress up in any way? Are you going to get the kids something special? What do you do?
We get the Christmas tree, we put up the Christmas lights.
Do you do special things with the lights? Have you got them to spell out, some sort of E equals MC squared? With the squared flashes or something?
Oh, Maynard. You have just suggested a brilliant idea.
Because it's very easy to do. A chaser lights, you could make an E.
Oh, yeah, mate. E equals MC squared is coming up on our Christmas lights this year.
And before you go, any predictions for the near future? You know what's coming up. You know what people are doing with computers and electronics. What will we be doing? What will be what will we be talking about in a couple of months' time?
Well, firstly, as always, computers will get faster and cheaper. Secondly, hopefully somewhere in the world there'll be an eclipse and I want to see it. Thirdly, time will continue to tick by at the rate of 1 second per second.
That's a fairly solid, but strange enough, shirts have not got louder. Your shirts are very loud, but they haven't got any louder.
Mate, you and me are the sole keepers of the faith when it comes to loud shirts. Yeah, we just keep trying, mate. We just got to keep trying and gradually we'll whittle the pot a bit.
I think it's like the sound barrier. We've got the loudest shirts and we've just got to work that little bit harder to get past that barrier to be even louder. I think it's like that. We will crack it out there. Look, thank you very much, Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki. The book is It Ain't Necessarily So, from a man I'm very happy to call bro. Dr. Karl, thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you, Dr. Maynard.
Yo, peace out.
Peace, love, mung bean.
People, tickets are available for the Skeptics Convention Dinner. That's right, as part of Skepticon, at every Australian Skeptic National Convention, there's a formal dinner. Or should I say, there is a formal dinner. The social highlight of an already highlight-full event. That's right, people will be talking, and Skepticon 2017 will be no exception. That's right, no exception, not even you. The dinner will be held on Saturday, November 18th. That's right, write that in your calendar right now. Oh, yeah. I know you haven't found it. Get a pencil then. Okay, Saturday, November 18th at the Sheraton on the Park, Grand Ballroom, Elizabeth Street, Sydney. I think I went out with Elizabeth Street. That's in Elizabeth Street, Sydney. It promises to be a grand event in its own right and its own left. But certainly not its own alt-right. You know what I'm saying? You know, you go. Okay, you people. Tough crowd. The ticket to dinner will cost $130 per person, and it includes a 3-course meal plus coffee and tea. Oh, well, that's worth it on its own. All drinks, wine, beer, and soft drinks. Musical entertainment from Rian Sheehan, award-winning music producer and screen composer from New Zealand, known for his fusion of atmospheric post-rock with electronic and chamber music. That sounds dangerous. Fusion? So it's like CERN, is it? Oh, hang on. Well, look. This may be an issue for some people. There will be alleged magician, comedian Eli Bosnick and podcaster from God Awful Movies and The Scathing Atheist. He's also known to Australian customs, and you know why. The annual Skeptic Awards will be announced. That's right. The annual Skeptic Awards will be announced. The Skeptic of the Year, Thornet Award for the promotion of reason, and the least sought-after award of the year anywhere, the Bent Spoon. Not to mention the conviviality and fun of the largest annual gathering of skeptics in Australia. And Eli Bosnick. The Sheraton on the Park is only a short walk from the convention venue at the City Recital Hall, Angel Place, Sydney. All are welcome to this kid-friendly event. Tickets are available from skeptics.com.au for all your skeptical needs.
On the 10th of September, a Facebook page was brought to my attention by my good friend Rebecca Jones, who sent me a little message with a link to No Jab, No Play, No Way rally to be held on Tuesday the 12th of September, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And the Facebook page says, Sydney CBD Martin Place, opposite the New South Wales Parliament House, Macquarie Street. No Jab, No Play, No Way rally hosted by No Jab, No Pay, No Way, Freedom of Choice. Details, in caps, urgent, Sydney rally against New South Wales No Jab, No Play legislation. Then in mixed caps, the New South Wales State Parliament Lower House will vote on the Public Health Amendment Review Bill on the 12th of September 2017. This bill will ultimately remove the conscientious and religious exemptions for non-vaccinated children so that they will no longer be able to attend any New South Wales childcare centres. The politicians and the media have created an environment of bullying, hate, intimidation and coercion against anyone who does not agree with their vaccine policies. Australians are being blackmailed, bribed and financially punished. Enough is enough. And it goes on in a similar vein. And towards the end it says, "Let's make this the biggest rally ever!" Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. In caps, "Let's unite. Let's say to Australia, we are here, we are growing, and we are not going away." Come and listen to over 10 medical and scientific speakers, as well as recent vaccine injury victims. And at the end there are some tags, one that says free admission. Well, it's in a public square. And almost unbelievably ironically, the other tag says kid-friendly. So I thought I'd go along. I thought I'd go along and see what there was to see. Just observe, just see what's the rally. You don't see many of these anymore. And upon my arrival, yes, there were some people standing around. I guesstimate about 50 all up. There were T-shirts and banners and posters. One poster stuck into a flower bed read, "Vaccines harm babies." There was a big banner that said, "Parents for safe vaccines. No jab, no play, no way." Another one that said, "We just want safe vaccines!" Exclamation mark. "Doctors, remember your Hippocratic oath. Parents, please use the informed consent. Read the vaccine inserts." Now, of course, that's appallingly hypocritical. They don't want safe vaccines. They want no vaccines. They've made this quite clear. Another one read, written on a bedsheet, it would appear, "Pro-science, pro-choice." That's ironic for you. But all in all, there simply wasn't that many people there. I began to film for Facebook, just live broadcast some of the talks and the scene. And as I was filming, a woman saw me out of the corner of her eye and darted over to me, and the following ensued.
Hi Richard, how are you?
Very good, thank you to Elena and all the other speakers, everyone involved.
Just want to meet some people here?
I'm sorry, who are you?
Who are you? Renata, how are you?
Oh, I'm well. How are you today?
Good, good. Now, what are you up to today?
I've come here to look at the rally. What are you up to today?
I'm just supporting the rally. Won't you like to support it? Don't you want to see and meet Judy? Come and say hello to Judy.
I found out about, a mother came to me and she said that her daughter was severely damaged by the Gardasil vaccines. Really, I was horrified. My children, luckily when I was, the one benefit about being vaccine injured when you are young, you learn that maybe things aren't what you thought they were or what you've been told. I was very lucky to be
generally of people who object to non-vaccinators? What do you think about people who object to non-vaccinators?
To all vaccinators?
Yeah, to people who object, like people who had vaccine injury. Do you believe in vaccine injury?
I think there is a vanishingly small case. We sort of liken it to seatbelts. Every now and then a seatbelt will not help in a crash, but millions of people are alive today because of seatbelts. We've almost eradicated polio. Smallpox is a thing of the past. Measles, mumps and rubella are not the curse they once were. Children still, sadly, are dying by the thousands of measles, and we're working very hard to try and combat that. So all in all, it's pretty good.
So do you think, do you think children have a right to be not vaccinated if they have an injury, or...
If they have an injury,
like, do you think, what about with medical exemptions and the sort of, how hard it is to get a medical
that would
exemption?
be up to the GP to make that call.
Right.
If the GP considers that a child, for whatever medical reason, it would not be appropriate for vaccination, that's entirely their call.
And were you coming to be positive here, or were you coming to actually,
observe?
And in the state of observing, what have you observed?
Well, you at the moment, I'm trying to observe it. Anyway, thanks very much. I'll keep observing.
No, I'm just curious.
So this is a poem from a mother in Sydney. Too good to be true. To spare them from measles, whooping cough and the flu.
Do you think you'll actually pay anyone that genuinely...
Well, if they genuinely have psychic power, yes.
But has James Randi ever paid anyone?
No, but...
I'm just not sure about all this. You'll come here and we're here to support and we're here to unite.
Hang on. You want to talk about the Skeptics Challenge?
The Skeptics Challenge, because I've never seen James Randi pay anyone.
Well, yeah, I was part of that challenge for many years, and the reason he hasn't paid anybody is because they never could live up to their claims.
Then do you enjoy doing that? Is that something fun that you do?
Well, imagine if we...
You don't believe in clairvoyance, I assume. You don't believe in...
Wait, let me talk.
The fact that I don't believe in clairvoyance, for example, doesn't mean there aren't clairvoyants.
Right.
My personal belief doesn't alter the way the universe is.
Okay.
If there are clairvoyants, and we can encourage them to demonstrate in a fair test, not only do they get $100,000, but society in general would benefit enormously, don't you think?
If there are clairvoyants.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I think it's great, but I just feel, from what I've seen of what you've done, like looking for clairvoyants, I just never see any clairvoyants come up to the challenge.
Oh no, lots have. They all failed so far.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think you're doing it kind of. Would you say you're doing it more for a bit of fun, to make fun of?
No, we're doing it to see if they have the power they claim to have.
But do you believe they have the power they have?
After 40 years of testing and all failed, I think we've got a good right. Well, I've got a good right to say no. I don't think so. But you know what? What if I'm wrong and they have that psychic power?
So you do believe that might have psychic power?
Well, I didn't create the universe or the laws that govern it. If there are psychics out there who can demonstrate it, then of course we'd accept it, wouldn't you?
Right, well, yeah, but I just feel what I've seen is that it's never really...
Years ago, skeptics were told to put up or shut up.
Right.
You rotten skeptics, put up some money and we'll see you. We did. 50 years ago. In 50 years of fair tests, in cooperation with the people wanting to be tested, none have shown they could do it. That doesn't mean we should give up. Do you think we should give up?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean,
don't you want to know if there are real psychics out there? We do.
I just don't. Do you believe in it? Because I just feel a lot of what you do is belittle. You're really running the whole sort of campaign against non-vaxxers, making fun of them, harassing them.
It's talking about the psychic challenge.
Yeah, the psychic challenge is one part, but I think there's a lot more what you're doing. It just isn't very nice. I mean, we're about health and positivity, and you guys are very quite...
We're firmly about health.
So what sort of health? Is it a farmer-backed health? Like, is it a health backed with, you know...
For those of you playing bingo, mark off conspiracy theory.
No, but what sort of health are you basing it on?
The best health that our society has ever produced, which is scientific medicine.
So we sit down and have a coffee about this? I mean, really, I just feel you're here just to really... Are you here really just to make fun? Like, these are dedicated...
You're monopolising all my time. I'm here to be quiet and watch this.
You're here to really mock and get dirt on us, aren't you?
I'm here...
I think that's what you're here for. I mean, Richard, really?
At this stage, she sort of melted away back into the crowd. And I turned to the camera and said,
have we seen enough? I mean, the crowd's pretty small. It's just boiled back into conspiracy theories. They're going to lose the vote anyway. What do you think?
First of the vaccine pass laws, I believe. Vaccine producers and our public health departments is a moral hazard and compromises...
As much as I'd like to hang around this, I think you get the general idea what's going on here. It's the same old thing we've seen again and again. The turnout is pathetic. It is a Tuesday, I'll say that, so a lot of people probably couldn't be here. But maybe it's the tail end of this whole thing. It'll never really go away.
Currently debated.
Of course, they said, let's make this the largest rally ever, and as we've said, there was only about 50 people there. And the irony is not lost on anybody, I think, where I was standing there minding my own business, simply filming and having a look, and the woman who accused me of all sorts of things, of being a nasty person, basically, and making trouble and all that, was the one who was making trouble and being a nasty person and being in my face. Oh, dear. But now, and I'm reading this to you on the 14th of September, this article has just been published at the Australian Skeptics website by Tim Mendham. New South Wales Parliament. No conscientious objection to vaccination. The New South Wales Parliament has passed legislation removing exemptions for conscientious objection in vaccination rules and tightening vaccination requirements for childcare centres and schools. The Public Health Amendment Review Bill 2017 passed both houses on September the 13th and now awaits royal assent. The bill, amendments, explanatory notes and Hansard transcripts of second reading speeches are available at the Parliament House website, and there's a link provided. The article talks more about the bill, but at the end there's a report on the rally, Anti-Vax Rally. On the day before the parliamentary debate, there was a rally of anti-vaccinators in Martin Place, Sydney, opposite the New South Wales Parliament House. Speakers included Judy Wileman, whose conspiracy-orientated PhD issued by the University of Wollongong raised the ire of academics, skeptics and the public last year. Wilyman was joint winner of the Skeptics Bent Spoon Award for 2016. The turnout could only be described as minimal. Accounts made by skeptics who attended the rally were that there were approximately 15 protesters, many of whom seemed to be talking amongst themselves rather than listening to the 4 hours of speeches. Following the rally, some protesters moved into the public gallery of the New South Wales Parliament to watch the debate. At the end of question time, when no vaccination issues were raised, they then left, disappointed. In fact, the Health Amendment Bill was not debated until the following day. And that article has a lot more information to it than I'll read out here. I'll leave you to read that at skeptics.com.au. So there we are, my adventures with the anti-vaccinators at their own rally. Thank you to all those people who watched on live as that woman, I won't say accosted me. She just got in my face and she was taking a video and photographs of me. And more than one person has made the comment that it's very much like what Scientologists do. Now, I don't for one moment suggest that she has anything to do with Scientology, but it was a similar sort of thing, just getting in your face and being vocal and not letting the topic drop. I think she was annoyed I was there, and she must have recognized me from my recent TV appearances, or in general, I guess. And I guess she was doubly annoyed when I didn't take the bait and I wasn't being disruptive or rude or disrespectful, and I simply answered her questions and spoke with her, instead of being what she wanted me and desperately needed me to be, which was some sort of agent there to disrupt things or spy or dig the dirt or some such James Bond fantasy rubbish. So another week in the life of being an active skeptic.
From the dawn of time, one podcast has unlocked the secrets of science and technology to enrich the lives of billions. And now, after a year where they've unlocked the golden age of knowledge, they're about to hit warp speed and go stratospheric.
Wait, hold up.
On Oh No, Ross and Carrie, we don't make extraordinary claims, we investigate them.
We go undercover with fringe religious groups, investigate paranormal claims, and we participate in pseudoscientific medical treatments and then report our findings to you.
And yes, we've even investigated Scientology.
Shh, Ross, shh. New episodes every month at MaximumFun.org.
Oh No, Ross and Carrie. They show up so you don't have to.
Now, you will remember last week I ran the audio from my TV appearance here in Australia to talk about the Australian Skeptics $100,000 challenge. The other guest they had on the segment was somebody who claims to be psychic, Ruthie Phillips. And as an aside, when I was lined up to go on the show, I wasn't told that there would be a psychic or someone on there to put the other side of the story, as they like to say. So I was quite unprepared. Nevertheless, you know, you do these things. I've got a lot of positive comment about the fact that I went on the show and at least got some points across, as you would have heard last week, or those people have seen the video. And if you haven't seen the video, there's a link on last week's show notes. Tim Mendham at the Australian Skeptics put together, with my help, this little overview of the appearance, which can be found at www.skeptics.com.au. Quote, top clairvoyant, end quote, refuses Skeptics $100,000 challenge. Published on the 11th of September 2017 by Tim Mendham. Ruthie Phillips, who bills herself as, quote, Australia's top clairvoyant medium, end quote, has turned down an offer to be tested for the Australian Skeptics $100,000 challenge. The offer was made to her by Australian Skeptics Inc. committee member Richard Saunders on Channel 7's Weekend Sunrise program on September the 9th. Saunders is chief investigator of the Australian Skeptics Inc. and judge on Channel 7's The One Psychic Challenge series. As an aside, the last series of that aired in 2011. We read on. He had been asked on the Sunrise show to talk about the prize and the fact that no one had successfully claimed it in 37 years. This followed an article on ABC Online which featured an interview with former Victorian Skeptics President Terry Kelly outlining the history of the challenge and the opportunities it offers anyone with a paranormal ability. The $100,000 challenge is open to anyone who can prove a psychic or paranormal ability under scientific conditions. As another aside, that sometimes gets misconstrued or misinterpreted. People think we have to test claims in a lab or something like that. Scientific conditions simply means good observing conditions or fair conditions or conditions which eliminate cheating or random chance, things like that. It continues. As a result of the ABC article and Saunders' TV appearance, the skeptics have received a stream of applications from psychics, ghost hunters, and even an egg sexer, not to mention other media outlets wanting to know about the challenge. Phillips looked decidedly uncomfortable when Saunders offered her a promotional check for the $100,000, refusing to touch it. Quote, I personally wouldn't set myself up for a fall like that because I think there are many parameters attached to this. It's an inexact science, end quote. She said, though the term science might be debatable. Quote, you don't have control over all the things like time and space. On the day, lots of things can cloud your ability, end quote. Phillips does, presumably, charge a fee for her services. One wonders if she offers a money-back guarantee if it is a cloudy day. Quote, if Ruthie has any real paranormal powers, she could easily take home the cash, end quote, said Saunders. Quote, and it's tax-free, end quote. Saunders pointed out that over the 37 years that the skeptics have been around, they have tested hundreds of people, including many water diviners, as well as psychics, clairvoyants, prophets, and telekinesis. Every test is designed in accordance with the claimant's skills and has to be agreed to beforehand by both parties to be fair and above board. The skeptic's offer is, quote, still open to Phillips or anyone else in Australia who claims they can talk with the dead or read people's auras and such like, end quote, Saunders said. It is interesting to note that many in the paranormal game in Australia label themselves as being the best. Apart from Ruthie Phillips, Australia's top clairvoyant medium, there is Milton Black, Australia's leading astrologer and psychic, Mitchell Coombs, Australia's most trusted medium, Francis Bevan, Australia's most accurate clairvoyant, psychic and astrologer, Amanda, Australia's most popular phone psychic, Deb Webber, Australia's best and most famous psychic medium, and Katrina Ligato, Australia's foremost psychic healer. Considering their promoted skills, any or all of these are invited to apply for the $100,000 challenge. And that report can be found at www.skeptics.com.au.
Calling all Skeptics in the Pub organisers across the world, we need your data. This is Brian Ego from Glasgow Skeptics here, and I'm looking for your input. The Skeptics in the Pub organiser workshop will be back as usual this year at QED, but we're doing things a little differently and we'd like to hear from you, even if you can't make it to the conference. This year, we want to build as accurate a picture as possible about how many active skeptics groups there are out there and gather some information about how you run your operations. To do this, we'd like to invite a representative from each SITP group to complete a survey. The data we gather from it will form the basis of how we approach the workshop at QED. For those that are going to be there, we'll tailor the session based on your survey input and discuss the topics that you want to cover. We'll certainly have the opportunity to discuss best practices and perhaps amuse ourselves with some of the highs and lows we've encountered over the year. If you're not going to be there, we're going to share the data with you after the conference, and maybe we can all find out some best practice together. To get to the survey, please go to glasgowskeptics.com/SITP or go to qedcon.org and look for the Skeptics in the Pub Organiser Workshop page. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Now, a few notes and loose ends to tie up. Just yesterday, I went along for a couple of hours to attend the comedy writing workshop of Tim Ferguson. Now, Tim Ferguson does the Bunga Bunga podcast with our reporter Maynard, and that's an award-winning comedy podcast. That show won the best comedy podcast in Australia at earlier this year at the Podcasting Awards. And Tim is running these comedy workshops, 2-day events. And what I saw and what I learnt from my brief time at the course was eye-opening. It was fantastic. And he says so many incisive things about writing comedy, and I learnt a lot. So if you're interested in comedy writing, I noticed Tim has another masterclass coming up in Melbourne in November. I'll put a link in the show notes, but the website to check out is cheekymonkeycomedy.com. cheekymonkeycomedy.com. Find out all about Tim and his masterclasses in writing and understanding comedy. He started off with "Why did the chicken cross the road?" and it just got better. Now, here's a note from the Australian Skeptics. The Australian Skeptics Convention is coming up, as you know, as we've been promoting. The dinner, too, which looks fabulous. But also, one of the major events every year at the convention is the awarding of the Bent Spoon Award. Now, this is a plea, a cry to everybody in Australia. If you want to nominate somebody or an organisation or a device or a product for the Bent Spoon Award, something you think is shonky or dodgy or doesn't live up to the paranormal promise, maybe it's a free energy claim, head to skeptics.com.au, click the link for the Bent Spoon Award, and please send in your nominations. We're going to put lots up soon. We're sort of gathering a list, but we do need input from the public. Here's your chance. Nominate someone, something. We will review your nomination to make sure it sort of fits within the guidelines. And who knows, the person or the product you nominate could end up winning the Bent Spoon Award. And finally, our dear friend Susan Gerbic from Guerrilla Skepticism just yesterday sent me this message.
Hello, everyone. This is Susan Gerbic from the Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia project. We're here at the Norway Skeptics lecture, and Mark Edward and myself have just finished lecturing to the Norwegian group. And say hi, Mark.
Hi, everybody.
And I'm sitting here, and I'm talking to a young woman, and she noticed my earring, and I'm wearing an origami dinosaur, and she says, "No, is that a Richard Saunders earring?" And I said, "Awesome, that is so awesome." So,
hi, I'm Karina Rose, and I'm one of the participants from Skeptics at the pub in Oslo, and I recognize the earring.
We're having a really great time here at Skeptics in the Pub, Norway. The Skeptics in the Pubs happen all over the world, and Mark Edward and I are on tour. So tomorrow we're going to be in Copenhagen. No, tomorrow is Stockholm. No, Stockholm. So we're having a great time, having a beer with everybody. And so you got something out of the lecture that Mark and I gave, different lectures. Tell us something you learned.
Well, I'd heard about the guerrilla skepticism before, and now I learned more about how to get into it and why it's important. Unfortunately, I was late, so I didn't see his lecture.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Karina. What nice things to say about me. I'm very jealous of Susan, of course, and our reporter Aran Segev. They're heading for the European Skeptics Congress, which is this week. Wow, I wish I was there. I do look forward to hearing all about it. Tickets are still available. And you can find a link on this week's show notes if you're in Poland or in Germany or anywhere around Europe or anywhere. Get on a plane. I will be there in spirit, I guess you'd say, and I look forward to hearing all about it. And just before I sign off, thank you very much to the people who continue to support the Skeptic Zone, of course. Without you, there'd be no show. And a special thanks to Jeffrey from Georgia, who chipped in with a generous donation this week to help keep the show going. Thank you, Jeffrey. But for now, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter @SkepticZone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.